Okay, so in the last segment I had plumbed the engine on the front of the plane with the fuel line and smoke tubing. I wanted to touch more on that, and I figured the best way to do that was to build the fuel tank. Kind of take a couple steps back. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see some of the stuff on the workbench. Unfortunately, zoom slowly. Alright. Now, like I said in the earlier video also, the instructions say that there's a difference in the stoppers. One's for nitro fuel and one's safe for gasoline. And we want to make sure that we're using the one for gasoline. And of course, that's not the one that comes installed. So we've got to take it apart and replace that. The other thing is, you want to decide if you're going to use a 2-line or a 3-line system, because this makes a difference when you're building the tank. It comes standard with just the 2 holes punched, and the third one is capped off. It's accessible from the back, and you can just use a small screwdriver and an X-Acto blade to punch the cap open. But then you'll want to use the brass tubing that comes with it. Just use a tubing cutter and cut the sections that you need so you can make your 3-line system, which is what I'm going to be doing. Also, on all the tanks that I build, I like to use a common setup. So I mark on the front of the tank with a Sharpie where there's going to be the fill line, the vent line, and the carburetor line. So when I put it together and I go to swap them out, I can look at the tank and quickly know which hose is to which source or destination. And then I'm going to be installing the ceramic clunk also. Let's go ahead and get that open. And for all the clunk lines inside the tank, I like to use a racer's wire. It's a safety wire, and you can just twist it around and make a good bond. You don't want the clunk coming off in the tank and having the hose just sitting there. But this is an important thing to do. I do it at least once a year. Unfortunately, I believe the ethanol in today's gas, I believe, is the cause for most of the Tygon getting stiff over time. And just got to deal with it. Let me cut off a little section of wire here. Now when you're twisting this, you don't want to twist it too much that you cut into the Tygon, but you want to make a good seal and not have it come off. So we'll give it a couple good twists here. You can see where it just starts to dimple the fuel hose, if it'll focus. And that's just enough to do that. And then we use these and go ahead and cut it back because we don't need that much wire to hold it on. And then fold it over out of the way. And now we can put that in the tank and hook this end up to a brass tube. So let me go ahead and get the tube set up on the new stopper, and I'll show you where we're at that point. So the mystery of the fuel tank is finally solved. I got it all together. Let me bring it closer here and show you. I replaced the rubber stopper with the correct one for gasoline. And you can see I have the little twisted wire on the inside to keep the hose on the copper pipe and to keep the clunks on here. and the long tube is my vent line, which gives me an orientation with my picture. And you can see how the vent tube is curved up so that it'll almost hit the top of the tank, and then I cut a V notch in it so that even if the tubing gets up against the top of the tank, it's still got adequate ventilation and it'll never get plugged up. So now it's just insert this into the tank and then tighten up the Phillips screw. Now you don't have to crank down on it. It's just a rubber expansion on the inside of the tank, but it's a pretty tight but not too tight type thing. And well, I'm going to go ahead and put together this tank and my smoke oil tank the same way, and then I'll worry about getting them mounted in the fuselage. Okay, so I have the model set up on the workbench now, and I'm going to go ahead and do the wheel pants real quick. And the way that I find to get a good even set of pants on the model is I use old editions of Model Aviation and find a thickness that has the trailing edge level with the ground. And I think that's what looks best when it's sitting out on the runway, which is when people are noticing them the most. In the sky, they can't see the angles too great. So I set up the thickness that gets it parallel along the bottom, and I can hold it flat up against the landing gear here. And again, I use my pin vise and just do a little pilot divot, because I'm going to be using the drill. I just want to make sure that the bit doesn't walk. Alright, let me go ahead and drill these out, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now the holes are drilled out. The kit comes with these little T-nuts, and you just put those in the back and use a pair of pliers and pinch them in. I get them started by hand. Okay, now the T-nuts are pressed in there. Install this on here and take our bolts. Alright, let me go ahead and get this cleaned up. I'll move the magazines over and Loctite that, and they'll both show up the same height off the ground. It's nice and parallel on here. And then when the plane's level, it's level. Alright, I'll see you soon.